What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at how the experience of Real Madrid beat Tuchel's tactical changes of Chelsea. Now, before we get into the match, check out the OneFootball app. It's the app I use to stay up to date with the latest games, the best teams in the world, and all the biggest news. It's the best app out there for all things football, and there's a free download and a link in the description below. It's the first link. Check it out. The support to the channel would mean a lot, and it's a must-have for all football fans, coaches, analysts, anyone who is concerned about the top-level football games. So be sure to check that out. That's me using the app on your screen there. So check that out in the description below. Also, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon. There's links to them in the description as well. And be sure to check out Keyframe. It's how I'm making this video. The link's in the description as well. Now let's get right into the tactics. So Chelsea in possession was the dominant phase of the match, and they started with a back three and Jorginho as their single pivot and Conte playing more as an 8. So the Conte-Jorginho relationship saw Conte go higher up the field and overload space between the lines with more attacking players like Christian Pulisic, Kai Havertz, and Mason Mount. Real Madrid would drop into a 5-4-1 and go through some rotations to get here from their offensive phase into their defensive low block. So from here we would then see the rest offense of Karim Benzema and then an asymmetric midfield four of Vinicius Jr., giving him more freedom to jump forward to then effectively transition with Benzema. Now, the biggest problem in the first half for Chelsea was their central defenders driving up the field, and because of the low block and the spatial orientation of Real Madrid in their defensive phase, the central defenders driving forward for Chelsea didn't have the same impact they usually do. So the central defenders were able to drive very high up the field and disconnect themselves with the back three, making it easy for Real Madrid to isolate the ball in wide areas and then set traps and win the ball back and then transition effectively. Now in the second half, Chelsea went with a back four, and this gave them more freedom in the wide area and allowed them to commit more players into central areas as well, giving them more influence on the Real Madrid shape higher up the field. Because Real Madrid didn't press very high, Chelsea were then able to then freely circulate the ball across their first line of build-up with less players committed to this area. This then gave them more freedom higher up the field to create more dangerous chances. And as we see, the man orientation from Real Madrid in the midfield allowed Chelsea to then overload the Real Madrid team in central areas. We would often see Kai Havertz dropping deeper from the striker position, overloading the half spaces with a number 8 or inverted winger, as well as dual width on this weak side for Reece James to get higher up the field, and then allow Hakim Ziyech to then invert and create more overloads between the lines, giving Real Madrid's defense more problems to deal with. So another picture from Chelsea's offensive setup was with their two central defenders playing more narrow to then control transitions, not affecting the half spaces as much and allowing for Chelsea to then overload players between the lines and use their double pivot to then secure transitions as their rest defense. So instead of a 3-1 rest defense, they now go with a 2-2 rest defense shape with two holding midfielders and two central defenders, and this entices the Real Madrid players to then jump from the midfield position, as we see their midfield three here, then creating more dangerous space between the lines and the half space for players like Kai Havertz, Mason Mount, Hakim Ziyech to then drop deeper and receive the ball. And then especially on the right-hand side, with Reece James holding the width, it gave much more freedom and more asymmetry to Chelsea's team, making them harder to play against from a Real Madrid perspective. And then the last tactical change or major tactical change in the match was bringing on Romelu Lukaku in a more central role, giving more freedom to then Kai Havertz to then move into the half spaces and try and pick up the ball between the lines, while always maintaining a central presence inside the penalty area, occupying the Real Madrid central defenders. Then we also see the asymmetric midfield four of Real Madrid in their defensive phase, with strong wide structures from Chelsea starting to occur to then be more dynamic and create more chances. We also see the double pivot, securing circulation when needed to keep Real Madrid pinned in their low block, but the experience of Real Madrid and the numbers they were able to get in and around the ball in front of their own penalty area was enough to see out the 3-1 victory and hold Chelsea off and limit the amount of times they were allowed to arrive in dangerous areas. Now Chelsea started the match in a more man-oriented approach, using their central forward Kai Havertz to then try and cut the field when pressing. They would then go with a man orientation through the midfield of Conte, Mason Mount, and Jorginho, and oftentimes Toni Kroos would drop into the left half space as he usually does, which would then force Conte to follow him to a certain extent, manipulating the Chelsea midfield players, creating more space for Benzema to drop deeper and then Vinicius to run in behind. And before we look at the goal involvement, I wanted to show some flexibility from the Real Madrid shape, with Toni Kroos dropping into the left wide area as a deep lying playmaker and then allowing more freedom for Casemiro, Modric, and Valverde to occupy central roles, while Toni Kroos moves into a wide area, manipulating the Chelsea defense. So with Mason Mount moving wider and Hakim Ziyech dropping to track the run of advancing Real Madrid players, we then have overloaded right-hand side from a Chelsea defensive perspective that allows them to progress through this left-hand side of Chelsea's defense more easily. Now for the last picture, we see Chelsea starting the game in their back five and what looks to be a 5-3-2 or a 5-4-1 depending on how you want to look at it and depending on the role Mason Mount is assigned. But we see the most important piece here is Karim Benzema getting on the ball between the lines and Vinicius dropping deeper. And then Vinicius running in behind when Benzema drops deeper, then forcing this Chelsea defense back and allowing Benzema to create the space. Also, we have Toni Kroos playing in this left half space as a deep lying playmaker, attracting the run of Conte to then jump and allowing then Karim Benzema to get this space. So this then opens up the space in behind and leads to their goals. And a lot of their chances are created through this movement and this partnership between Vinicius and Benzema. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.